I'm joined by Rob M. Lee, founder and CEO of Dragos. Rob, thanks for joining us. How's it going today? It looks like you're in the office.
Yep. Yep.
Right on.
Everything's going well, man. Just down the office. It's the end of the year planning, trying to pretend that some big strategy is going to change everything for the next year. So all good stuff, man.
And Disc is coming up, right?
Yeah. The Dragos Industrial Security Conference. It's always fun. That is November 6th this year. We moved it because the election. It's always like November 5th, but I guess the election is kind of important. Actually, the conference itself is the 7th. The employee portion is the 6th. So yeah, a bunch of research presentations, a lot of fun, and it's usually 400 or 500 asset owners and operators come together and have some good crab and beer and talk ICS security.
Sweet, sweet. Well, I'm going to be making it out there for the first time, so looking forward to
I think you
catching
have a
up
lot.
in person. But for those who aren't following, Rob just became Frenos' first advisory board member, and we wanted to take this opportunity to sit down with him today to really discuss what the future looks like in OT cybersecurity, really from a technology landscape over the next decade. We're also going to touch on why he's joined our board and give his unique perspective on what venture capitalists are getting right and wrong as it relates to OT and critical infrastructure cyber. So, Rob, to kick things off, we've known each other now for over a decade. While I was still working as a cybersecurity practitioner, securing the electric and gas grid in California, you were just in the beginning stages of founding Dragos. From my perspective, the OT security market really wasn't established back then. And it really was established once Dragos and kind of all of the OT threat detection other companies were really founded. And really fast forward to today, and now we have a number of unicorns and centaurs, which I no idea what that means, but there's a cool
Just
name.
more made up Silicon Valley words, man. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the biggest news yesterday, which I'm sure you saw, is Armis now with a $4.2 billion evaluations, which is absolutely crazy. And congratulations to them. But want to ask you a question. Really, you talk to VCs, you've raised a ton of money. What are kind of the biggest misconceptions they have about the OT security market overall?
Yeah, I think so. Great question. There's a bunch of different ways to take this, and VCs come in a large range, and then you get into different types of investors and later stage and private equity firms and all of that. So I would say, to me, the earlier stage, so let's take them to start with. The earlier stage folks, I think, trip up on investing in this market, usually in a couple of areas. One is they don't understand the total addressable market. So it's like one of the first VC questions is, what do you think the TAM is? Which, as maybe a bit of an arrogant founder, I always was like, how is that my problem? Like, you are the investor. You should know the TAM. I'll tell you what I'm bringing to market and be the expert on that. You tell me if you want to invest or not. But it's really the investor's job as they're servicing their limited partners and LPs and so forth to understand the size of the markets they invest in. But it's really hard for them to conceptualize what is the total addressable market of OT, because in my opinion, a lot of them try to make it a category. Here are the category for endpoint protection. Here's a category for cloud security. Here's a category for, all these different things. What is the OT security category? And it's like that. It's not a category. It's a market. You can have an OT specific firewall. You can have an OT specific endpoint. You can kind of take everything in your market map over here and put it into an OT market. It's not just a little thing. So it's really, I joked around that it's, I don't know, everything networked to physics. Like that's a pretty large total addressable market. And the later stage folks really get that one. Like my conversation was like BlackRock, they're one of our investors. And I walked in and started talking about the total addressable market. And they're like, stop. We're BlackRock. We get it. Industrial's big. But we want to know why you're the right team, right? And so it just kind of spins based on what size of the market you're talking to. The second one that I think they make a mistake in is there's this expectation that everything that was in IT security should be in OT security. So if they get to the point that OT is a new market, they go, okay, well, what is the OT endpoint? And it's like, well, hold on, like, what are we trying to solve for? Because maybe an endpoint protection system isn't the right technology for what customers are trying to actually solve for. Therefore, we don't just need to copy and paste kind of the marketscape truly over to OT. And I think then the third one is the orderality of what kind of has to come first, which is really what attracted me, what you guys are doing and how you're approaching it, because you couldn't have launched a Frenos back when Dragos was starting. It wouldn't have made sense. But now that you have a number of these visibility players, I know we may get into this later, but now you have a number of these visibility players that have said, hey, let's go south of the firewall and find out that you have large networks, you have large OT networks. This is where revenue is generated. This is where impact safety is. Now let's talk about using that data. Let's talk about making smart decisions and risk-based decisions and so forth. Now that there's that layer, you can get to a Frenos. I think a decade ago, you would have failed. And so timing the market right is really, really important. And as much as we all like to think we're good at that, the reality is we're all usually pretty early on the market. But now it's starting to form. And so orderality is that third bucket that I think people really trip up on in the venture capital world.
Yeah, yeah. Talk about your early investors, right? I think about them. I think of Bob Ackerman over at Data Tribe and Allegis. I think about Energy Impact Partners.
Yep.
What did they identify that maybe others just couldn't grasp? Were they just like, okay, we get it, it's critical infrastructure, it's important, but what did they see that maybe other investors just didn't at that time,
Yeah.
maybe a decade
Yeah.
ago?
To me, if you're going to do OT cyber, you really needed to be from OT or cyber. Being an infrastructure investor wasn't enough. And so we've gotten to the point even now, I've raised over $420 million at Dragos so far. And I love like investors have a lot of value. And I think it's easy to like roll your eyes and go, oh, investors are great. And they make a lot of this possible. But we got to the point, even with my respect towards them, that I won't take the phone call or the email from people that aren't investing from like cyber, as an example. What I mean by that is there was a number of venture capital firms early on that I would talk to that would say, hey, we've historically invested in SaaS. Great. Software as a service, great stuff. And we want to invest in Dragos. And I would ask, what are your other cybersecurity investments? And they wouldn't have any and go, we won't be your first. You won't get there. You'll find IT cyber stuff that feels more comfortable to you and is like a one-step pivot for you, but you won't get up to speed fast enough on OT cyber to ever make this successful. And I'd tried dozens of times and they just can't get there. But if they've invested a bunch in cybersecurity technology companies, then they go, oh, okay, well, here's what I know is similar. Here's what's different. Let me cross that chasm of what's different to get to the investment. And it's just kind of like one leap they have to make. And so they can get there. Customer acquisition costs can be different, sales cycles will be different, NDR expectations, net dollar retention expectations are going to be different. There's a lot of differences for them to get comfortable with, and you can get there from cybersecurity. Or I saw some of the players that would invest in like the OSI softs of the world and like that level of OT's technology investment they could get to cyber. And so what was helpful was like Bob over at Allegis had been investing in cyber companies forever, so he got it. Samir over at Energy Impact Partners. Energy Impact Partners was built out of the LPs, the limited partners being power companies. So they knew what problem they were trying to solve. Coke Disruptive Technologies had a bunch of manufacturing, so they knew the problem they were supposed to solve. And then you get to later stage where you don't need that so much. Then it's just math. Like the D round, it's just math. And so like BlackRock's like, okay, yep, those are great metrics, done. It's a bit easier later, but there was plenty of people that got it that weren't investors in us as well. Like I always throw out like Sid at Foundation Capital as an example, really gets it. Like people that took the time to really be educated on the market and take that journey, then get it. But there was Steve over at IVP, got it. The funny story with that though, IVP, fantastic firm, just like top class kind of venture capital firm. Steve, one of their lead partners, like totally got it. I went in front of the investment committee. The other partners couldn't get there. They hadn't done a lot of cyber investments. They'd done SaaS. They couldn't get there. So by the time you get to the investment committee, it's usually signed, sealed, delivered. And I got turned down at the last minute, and it shocked Steve and it shocked me. And years later, Steve and I are still colleagues over it because it made sense, but it was too much too fast for somebody that didn't come from that background.
Yeah, yeah, that makes complete sense. And we've talked to some investors, both who've invested in other OT security companies and some who don't have an OT company in their portfolio, which is kind of leads me into the next question, which is really about the OT technology landscape as it exists today. I see it as there's really kind of three established product categories in OT. I see obviously Dragos in the OT threat detection visibility companies. I see kind of the network infrastructure firewall networking types of equipment where they're either blocking traffic or encrypting and cloaking. That's a kind of new, kind of hip term. And then there's the SRA, secure remote access slash zero trust kind of companies. Want to get your perspective on where do you see Frenos fitting into the OT vendor landscape? Are we competing with any of these existing categories? Do you think we're building our own category? That's a huge question for investors. I always get a lot. It's like it's always a struggle on oh, are you building? Well, if you're building one, there's a lot of education, so that's a con. But if you're competing, it's like, oh, then you're late to the game. And so just want
Yeah,
to
you can
kind of
never have the right answer.
yeah,
There's
exactly.
nothing you say that is be the right answer. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just yeah, give an idea of like what your thoughts on what we're doing, which is really kind of doing zero impact security assessments and really focusing on like kind of the proactive mitigations that people can take, leveraging the data sets that they get from Dragos and all those other companies.
Yeah. So when I look at it, I think you framed it well. There's like these existing categories and they're at various levels of maturity. Because even if you look at secure one access, it's one of the most obvious ones. It's just emerging. If you take Exona, Ciolo, Exona, Xage, I think there's like a couple more. But you add them all together and it's well south of 100 million in ARR of all the companies added together. So that's not really there yet, but it's very quickly getting there. It's like, yeah, that one's obvious. And so that one counts. Yeah, anything to do with firewall segmentation, micro segmentation, the Elysies of the world, even some of the established players like Palo Alto and Cisco and Fortinet getting in that game, like that makes a lot of sense. And obviously like the visibility. But if you follow it, what essentially has happened with the market is we're going to segment this stuff off, right? The segmentation of the world. And that was the number one OT security control deployed like forever across these industries. And of course, different industries do different things, but primarily it was let's keep it disconnected from IT, right? Let us segment it off the best we can. Then it was the Dragoses and visibility vendors of the world to go south of the firewall for the first time to say, hey, there's a lot of stuff down here, and let's open our eyes to it. Then it was, oh, we do have a lot of connectivity and vendors and others. We got to secure that. So if you follow it, it's literally just the journey down into OT security that then starts those categories. And so that's where I mentioned in the first part, we talked about venture capitalists that get it wrong. Like there's an orderality to follow the customer journey, not what you want to do with tech. You have to follow the customer journey. So, hey, I've segmented off. Now I'm looking inside the box. Now that I'm looking inside the box, I got to secure the communications. You follow that customer journey to go, well, what's the next logical thing you do? And there are some markets that'll be more in the compliance world, like the hey, let's do stuff that helps us with NIS2, NERC, SIP, stuff like that. You always have kind of those ones, but for true broad-based categories, following that customer journey, one of the next logical things is now I'm going to end up having 3 or 4 different technologies deployed for the first time. I've never had that before in OT. It wasn't a problem for me. So I have these multiple technology stacks deployed, and I've got more data than ever before. And for most companies, they have a limited IT security staff already. They feel under-resourced. And then they were just told, oh, by the way, here's an even bigger and more important side of your business, and you're not getting much more resources. So they're going, whoa, okay. And then they're getting flooded with all this extra data. So the next logical step in the customer journey is how do I prioritize? What am I doing? With all of this stuff, it's not bad investments, they're good investments, but how do I take advantage of the investments, operationalize the investments, and prioritize what I'm doing? And so with Frenos as an example, and so I'm getting to your question finally, with Frenos, I hear you, I hear your pitch, I hear a position it. The thing that I have told a couple investors, and I've been straight with you about this. It's no surprise. I won't reveal all your secrets, but I think you guys are onto something a lot bigger than what you're positioning. And so there is the near term today value of the continuous security assessments and validating the security controls to some extent. There is the let's use AI in a smart way that's not buzzwordy to help prioritize. Like I'm getting the flows from Dragos and competitors to help figure out like where I'm going and putting my time. But to me, there's a much larger just how do I make decisions with data as it relates to security decisions across my OT organization. And I think you're building that platform. And it's not just we can make a better risk conversation because I don't, there's certain things that sound like a good product categories that are just features. Oh, look, I can do just attack path analysis. That alone is not a product category. Hey, I can do security risk scoring. That alone is not a product category. Like these are nice features. They'll get eaten up later, but let me help you make better security decisions across your entirety of your organization while adding value to all the different security investments you're already currently making and helping you operationalize those. That's a product category. And so I think that's that next one. And then I think there's a couple of emerging ones. My crutches fell. Sorry, I had surgery again. I'm always having knee surgery these days. But I think there's a couple other emerging ones, but I would definitely say that Frenos is in that next emerging one. And I don't know what the category would be anyways. I think it's more equivalent to like the Salesforce of OT security decision-making thoughts of like, here's a true data platform. But I don't know what the category would be. And I think that's a good place to be in, to be honest. That's the preferred answer to me. But they're right. There's going to be a lot of education to do. But the good thing is for y'all, the customer acquisition cost, the sales cycles, things like that will actually be lower because you are following a customer journey. So you're not going and having evangelical sales pitches. It's not you have this problem and you don't even realize it in a category you don't even know exists and we have an answer. It's hey, here's this thing you're dealing with on a day-to-day value. Let me go show you value. There's almost a try before you buy motion with you that's better than a sales pitch. So I think it won't be as costly in terms of a category creation as some of the investors are thinking because of how you're approaching it and because of the logical customer journey follow.
Exactly. I mean, I think we're really riding on the coattails of Dragos and all the competitors. I mean, you guys have been, as I said, built this market. I see companies now have OT security resources and teams because it's now such a priority. Talk about other tailwinds, like
Mhm.
compliance, major compliance tailwinds for critical infrastructure in pretty much every sector, right? Really kind of pushing. It seems to me, and would love your perspective. They're kind of following NERC because it's kind of the
Mhm.
de facto standard that's been in existence now for over a decade. And the electric utility side seems like TSA is really kind of adopting that same look and feel. Yeah, talk about the tailwinds as it relates to kind of OT cyber and like all the forces. Maybe even Biden's infrastructure bill is something that I talk about. Yeah, would love your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think at a top level, sort of tailwind that's driving a lot of these other ones you're talking about, we can enumerate them as well. It is awareness at the executive level of what isn't getting done. Because no point has a CEO or CFO ever been confused on where they generate revenue in their company. Nobody ever thought it was the IT department. They love their IT department. It enables the business, but the reason you're in business is your operations side of the house. And no president or prime minister is confused on where national security is placed. It's on electric infrastructure and banking infrastructure and the critical part of critical infrastructure. What wasn't clear, and I've seen happen, and I've been in White House level conversations to boardrooms across the world, and it's pretty much the same everywhere. There was this view that enterprise cybersecurity meant the enterprise. And if you ask the CISOs, they're like, wait, what are you talking about? We've never represented it that way. We're talking about enterprise IT. They're like, yeah, look at the cybersecurity scoring and risk and understanding of our company. No, 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 of the non-revenue, non-safety impacting portion of your company. And that light bulb moment is coming on fast for executives around the world. I think ransomware helped highlight that a heck of a lot for executives. When the ransomware started getting the operations side of the house, and like, what do you mean we weren't doing stuff down there? I think governments around the world are chiefly aware of it now. And so you're seeing OT specific call outs because and executives don't want to. It'd be so much easier to say cyber, but they're realizing that cyber isn't getting the job done. So they're having to specify, you know what, there's an OT portion that we mean, right, guys? We're tracking OT here. And you're seeing that from Congress. You know, I've done Senate and House testimonies now 4 times, and they've gotten more specific each time. The last one was an OT specific cybersecurity look at the water sector. You know, they have to call that out. If you look at Singapore, the OT cyber expert panel, you know, the OT SEP, and they have an OT master plan. You look at Australia, the ASD and ACSC have an OT uplift program, NCSC in the UK. So long story short, you have an executive staff not coming out of a CSO office that is going, guys, we weren't doing this. We need to be doing this. This is the stuff that we actually care about. And that's driving regulation. You know, TSA was really just a sort of reaction to colonial. You see NIS2 in Europe, which is going to make way more changes than people realize. Definitely see NERC SIP moving beyond classic NERC SIP, like NERC SIP 15, the one coming out now. I mean, that's crazy that we're getting into discussions where FERC is saying, hey, we want you to do east-west traffic analysis to be able to detect threats inside the electronic service perimeter. Like, that's not the level of expertise where FERC was 10 years ago. They're like, that was a great one. And so the tailwind to me is awareness, true awareness and understanding of exec staff that then drives compliance standards around the world. And you're right, NERC SIP is seen as the gold standard, even when you go into any other country. You can go to Germany and ask them in the manufacturing sector if they've heard of NERC SIP and they know what it is, right? And so you see the NERC SIP stuff, you see geopolitical conflict. It surprises nobody that Russia and Ukraine are in conflict. People are worried about China and Taiwan. And there's a view at every national security level conversation you're having of cyber will be leveraged to keep people out of the conflict or in conflict, and it'll be leveraged on the critical part of critical infrastructure, OT. You also have just transformation that's taking place. We've heard Industry 4.0 and digital transformation for years, but now it's really here for a lot of companies, especially in the manufacturing sectors. And they're going, oh, wow, well, we're connected up like in ways we've never been before. We better figure out how to secure this, but you can't just copy and paste from IT. So you've got these various sort of tailwinds going, we need to do something. And the actual interesting blocker that I see, which is different that I think most markets have to deal with, is it is at the CSO office. And there are a bunch of really amazing CSOs, you and I know, that are killing it. And there's a bunch that are almost paralyzed in fear of anywhere in the organization, anywhere I've ever been before, if I roll out a vulnerability management program, endpoint protection systems, build a SOC this way, have a data loss prevention program, and do encryption, I look like a hero. Now there's all this new stuff I have to learn in a segment of the business I've never been in, and I'm supposed to get all this done and this, and they're getting overwhelmed. They're going, I don't want to do it. Let me just do IT stuff, and it's not working. And so I'm having conversations with board members who are like, look, we love our CSO, but the revenue portion of the business is OT. Rob, should I not just take somebody from OT and make them the CSO? And so there's some companies thinking that way. And I'm not saying that's the right answer. I'm saying that there's a bunch of CSOs that are going to have to realize that they cannot block the securing of the critical part of their business in a way that actually respects the operations side of the house. I still see the number of IT folks will roll their eyes and go, "Oh, those ops people." I'm like, "You mean those people that are keeping the business running? Yeah, you're going to have to work with them. You can't ignore them." And so that's not normal, which is actually it'll present interesting sales and marketing challenges, but it presents a much larger upside as well.
Yeah, which is another question I wanted to talk about because I used to sell into the for the last few years sell into the OT market or in the early days, starting in like 2016, and what I saw at that time was there just wasn't a lot of people, experienced people, who make kind of technical and financial decisions as it relates to kind of securing the OT environments and kind of what's happened or what I've seen firsthand because you've hired a lot of my team I used to work with
Yeah.
back at SD Genie. Shout out to Dan Isho Susi and Austin
Yeah.
Scott, Julian Gumanis, but who are awesome, talented people. But we've seen a lot of that talent, right, leave the asset owners and go do startups, go do consulting and other opportunities. What are your thoughts? Like, what can asset owners do? Because I talked to asset owners today, and actually a lot of their employees came from IT, right? I've seen database administrators kind of come into IT. I've seen people from physical security jump into cyber. Kind of obviously you're involved with SANS and you're educating people.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts? How can we help not just kind of the technical and manager levels, but even these CISOs, right? I'm sure you've had conversation with CISOs and like, oh man, this person might not be up to speed on everything OT. So what are your thoughts on helping the community overall with this challenge? Because we know there's a shortage. It's always talked about. What
Yeah.
what can we do to really help educate those folks?
Yeah. So multifaceted answer. I mean, I think there's definitely the pitch on Frenos of like the decisions you guys are helping make and basically like an ICS security expert in a box. So that's going to help a lot of people. But when you look at kind of this space, one of the things I think asset owners and operators struggle with, that they should get better at, is if they always talk about, I'm just stereotyping a whole community, I go, they just talk about, but one thing I commonly hear is, well, we can't pay what the banks pay. Or we can't pay what a security vendor pays. We can't pay, our people are going to leave. And that's really not true. And I heard this back when I was in the military. Oh, we can't keep people. They're going to go to the private sector where they get paid more. I'm like, that's not why they're leaving. And I always would tell, the various generals, there's pay, there's sort of rising through the ranks, there's progression. So there's pay, there's progression, and there's mission. And in the military, you've got a really compelling mission, and you really can't do most of what we do in the military anywhere else in the world. So if you want to do that work, or when I was at the NSA, you want to do what the NSA did, you were doing it at the NSA, right? And so that mission, very compelling. You just can't suck at all three, right? You got to have two. You got to give them progression and mission, and they'll stay for lower pay. And I'm not saying you don't pay people well, but I'm saying you don't have to like match the bank. And so let's take an electric utility as an example. I'll go to an electric utility, they'll complain about this, and I go, your IT staff, when's the last that you want to do OT security work? When's the last time you've given them time and ability to go out to a substation? When's the last time you've taken them to a compressor site in a pipeline? Oh, well, no, we're busy, busy. I'm like, okay, so you're not giving them the mission that the electric utility has. So they're just sitting in an office in a cubicle like they would be at the bank. So if it's literally the same thing to them, why wouldn't they go to the bank and make more? And so a lot of people that come to like a security vendor, we get people coming to Dragos that would love to be at asset owners and operators, but they want to get in the field. And when they're on our services team, they're going to go to a bunch of sites and get in the field. If you want to be an incident responder, you're probably not going to do many incidents at one company. But if you're at a vendor to hit 50 companies, that's a lot of experience and a lot of fun. And that's what satisfies you. And so I think on one level, you have to embrace what makes your company interesting and make sure your employees get to experience that. And so if you're at an asset owner and operator and you have a CSO that wants to get educated on this topic, sure, take the SANS training, use tools and Frenos, use all these other things. But like, when's the last time you went out to the field? Go grab a hard hat, go grab a case of beer, go talk to operations. And so you gotta embrace what is interesting about your company. You gotta get out there. Like, that's the number one thing. If you don't know what the problem is that you're solving, and it's the vendor's salespeople that are telling you what the problem is, you're always going to have a bad experience. Because even if they're being authentic and true, it may not be the nuance in your problem. And so you need to go figure out what your problem is as the customer. Then you can go have an educated conversation with consultants and technology providers and everybody else, as well as operations. But if you've never been out to the site and operations is like, we don't think we have the problem that you think we have, now you're just going to resort to, well, compliance says, or fear mongering. And it would be a lot better to actually go out to the field, get that insight, become a partner to the business, and you gain a hell of a lot of expertise. Then you can start taking more advantage of all of this other stuff as well. And the other thing I'll say real quick before I turn it over, this whole skills job, sort of skills gap thing is so made up. People come out like, there's 800,000 job shortages. No, there's not. Go look at them. Most of those jobs are unfillable. It'll be like, hey, I need an entry level cybersecurity analyst with a SANS cert and 3 years of experience. That's not entry level. Or it'll be, I want somebody with 10 years of incident response skills, 5 years of threat intelligence, 8 years of malware analysis, and we'll pay him $50,000. Like, not going to get that person. Or you'll have the, I want somebody with 3 years of experience in a technology that's 2 years old. It's just really, we have an HR and job sort of description problem, but there's not 800,000 jobs unfilled. Like, if you just go look at your front end sort of filtering and how you manage those profiles to determine why you're not getting people hired.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I love is building just great teams and really seeing people taking them right out of college or just starting their careers and really helping them find their passion and their place in the industry. And so we have Frenos already a startup. We've already hired a handful of young folks straight out of college who with computer science backgrounds who are interested in cyber. And yeah, I'm personally just so excited just to see them blossom
It's
into.
fun, man. It's fun when you get to build teams, and it's fun when they go out in the right way, and go do other things. Like Harry, your co-founder, he was at Dragos, and now to see him going and taking that experience, going somewhere else, and then going and founding a company, like you feel pride. Like, I can't take any ownership of Harry's, success here, but I feel that I do, as founding a company that he stepped through and spent time in. you feel pride in that. It's good to build teams. And so I'm excited for you as well in the journey that you're taking to be on the front of it. It's fun. It's dramatic.
Yeah.
There'll be no lack of people that tell you're doing everything wrong. But it's fun.
A lot of highs and lows. That's for sure on a daily basis.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about
Hourly. Yeah.
talking about Harry, who's building our product, I want to a common thing I hear about kind of products in this space, Rob, is I hear this comment a lot of people say IT security products are good enough for OT. They're just good
Oh,
enough
yeah.
to get by.
Yeah.
Um,
It's one of
to
the most
meet the
uneducated things.
requirements and the demands and the uniqueness of OT. I've never like as you know, and you've been an incident responder, some of the most critical cyber events that we've seen. Um, you understand the uniqueness of OT, and what when you're in critical infrastructure, I never want to say to someone or any of my millions of customers, I just want to be just good enough. So, what's your take on hearing people say, "Look, like I feel like my IT security product can, you know, just are good enough to meet the requirements in OT."
Yeah. So I will start off with without trying to come off defensive. It is almost insulting. And so I'll try not to frame it that way, but let me say what gets under my skin about it, maybe a better way to do it. I will hear that phrase most often from people who've never done OT security before, even in their own company. And so if you don't have any experience in the field, and you don't have any experience even rolling out IT security products in OT to achieve objectives, it's really off-putting to go, this thing can work or this thing can't work. And it'd be a lot better to go, I don't understand. Help me see it. If you can convince me, no problem. If you can't, I still got to live with the choice, right? And so that's totally fair. So it's totally okay for somebody not to get to the same answer as you, but there's a certain arrogance of, look, I've never been an incident responder, but let me tell you what you're supposed to do in incident response. Like that doesn't make sense in any other context. But people that have never done work on the south part of the firewall will be the first people to go, I mean, you can just do IT security stuff. Like you don't have the experience to make that statement. You can say, I don't understand, so I'm not going to invest. You shouldn't start off with what you think the answer is if you have no expertise to get there. And I know that probably sounds a bit more defensive than I intend because they're still really good people. But that's the first part of it. The second part is I've not seen IT security products and efforts rolled out in ways that have not been disruptive, like not even just aren't achieving the right outcomes, not just good enough, but disruption. Like how many times have you, everybody in this community seen more power outages and manufacturing outages and pipeline outages due to well-intentioned IT projects than threat actors? Like I've responded to more cyber incidents from well-intentioned IT people than Russia, China, Iran combined. And so I'm not even saying it's good enough. I'm saying it can be dangerous. And so we're far off that good enough line. But the mindset of being good enough in critical infrastructure, the mindset of being good enough in your revenue generating side of the business should be an issue as well. And that's where I usually advise organizations that you probably have 25% of your sites for any reasonable sized organization. Probably 25% of your sites are really generating all the revenue for your company, or like they're like your crown jewels. It's like the big ones. You've probably got another 25 to 40 that are keeping you going and they're important, but they're not critical. And you've probably got 20+% down the bottom. That's like, if I lost it, it's not that big of a deal. Like, outside of maybe still someone's going to get out you in the power sector, but like a manufacturing company, they've got 10 facilities that if they lost it, it wouldn't mean anything. And if you want to tell me at the ones that you could lose and you don't really care that there's a good enough answer, I'd be willing to buy that. And if you told me at the ones that are kind of keeping you going, you just want to be average and do the right sort of norms, which would be OT security, that okay, I got you. But that 25% that's actually your crown jewels, you should be above average. And so if you're going to be good enough anywhere, then do it at the bottom end of the spectrum is kind of the point there. I don't want to get in front of a board of directors and say, hey, the whole purpose of our company and the places where we have the most health, safety, environment, or revenue impact of this company, the top 25% of our crown jewels, we're just going to phone it in. That's not going to be a winning answer. And again, for a CISO, it's not our choice. Like risk management is not actually what we do. We are advisors when you're in a CSO or security organization. You are saying, hey, board of directors, CEO, here's the advice and what we see. What do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do about it? What's the resource you want to put behind it? But the last thing you want to do is being hiding risk to the CEO or board. A lot of times they get called in an instant response and deal with CEOs and board members. It's almost like therapy sessions because they thought a lot more was getting done. They thought they were doing best in class, and then people were doing just good enough or just IT stuff. And it's a shock session, and they're heartbroken. And like, I mean, literally I've seen tears out of grown men's eyes in CEOs positions during a massive incident response. And they're like, but we authorized this project and we did this and I invested here. And I'm like, no, that's not what they actually did. And that disconnects. I'm cool if an organization says, I don't believe you. I don't think this is the right answer. We're gonna do this. If they're all aligned on it, that's their choice to make. But what I don't want to see is one part of the organization thought this, one part of the organization thought this, and the CEO is misled. That's not a good day for anybody.
Yeah, there's definitely disconnects at certain levels. Definitely seen that across my career. We do have a live question. As if folks can't tell, I'm a horrible webinar
No,
host.
that's good.
Not even tell people they can ask questions. So please, there is a Q&A box that you can ask Rob and I questions. We've got one from an anonymous attendee asking, I'm wondering, what does the term south of the firewall mean? Rob, I used to call it the OT curtain. So when I was selling passive monitoring back in 2015 at my electric utility, I would always say, what's behind the OT curtain? Because we
Yeah.
really knew what was behind there. But why don't you
I
explain?
always talk about it as Schrodinger's ICS. Yeah, we just look inside the box and see if the cat's alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not like an industry term. You don't need to adopt that like south of the firewall. I just mean that for a lot of organizations, there was sort of the IT managed interface or IT managed firewall to then segment off everything from OT and IT, and then in the plants or in the facilities or in the substation, not usually not substation, but control centers or so forth, you would have another firewall usually managed by OT. And so that would give you kind of a DMZ, and it was quite literally like 30th parallel DMZ of keep IT out and keep OT in, and so my coin of phrase there is more of south of that firewall, almost looking from a top of your organization being IT, getting down into your operations networks, saying you need to go beyond looking in your IT networks. You need to realize you have this whole portion of your business that you just segmented off that still has all these networks, connectivity, getting out to vendors and integrators, not all coming through IT. And so that's what I mean by south of the firewall. I don't think you need to use that term in the industry, but it was just sort of a flippant statement here. But I think the key point though is there's a lot of organizations that think to get to their OT, you have to go through their IT, and it's just not true anymore. Hasn't been true for a while. You probably have to go through somebody's IT to get to OT, but it's not necessarily yours. It could be an integrator, it could be an OEM, a service provider. And honestly, a lot of them now just have interfaces to connect into directly, or they're using cloud connectivity for data historians in the cloud and predictive analytics and performance analytics and things like that. So you can just go direct to OT in a way that you probably couldn't have reliably done 15 years ago. And you need to go look at what's all going over and going on in that inside the box, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Awesome. We got another question. We will be providing a recorded and transcript of this, so don't worry. Check out. Here's a plug: Frenos.io or our LinkedIn. We'll have it up there for you. But Rob, I started passive monitoring in the early days, and I know a lot of kind of the visionaries and the progressive folks out there have too, right? They've been probably on their journey for 5+ years. Um, where do you see, I mean, you talked about it earlier, like the progression of kind of their capabilities, their technical roadmaps. What do you envision kind of happening for the next 5-10 years, and the priorities that they have?
For the visibility vendors like the Dragoses of the world,
No,
yeah.
no,
So
for the asset
yeah,
owners
yeah,
who,
yeah, no, fair enough. No, I think it's going to go back to kind of what I mentioned about the customer journey. So I think it was a starting place of I don't even know what I have. Show me what I have, and that's where the whole market, because Dragos early on was like, let's do threat detection, when everyone else was all we really care about is asset identification. And everybody cared about a little bit of everything, but we were really hitting the threat detection drum when people were hitting the asset identification drum, and kind of what I was trying to tell people, sometimes it works, sometimes it didn't. What I was trying to tell people is that asset identification problem is a good problem to start with, but it's today's problem. Your whole thing is, I don't know what I have, and you want to start there. But the moment that you then see what you have, you're moving to what do I do with all this data, which is going to get into vulnerability management, which is going to get into threat detection, which is going to get into response and investigations. And you need to plan the whole journey up front because rolling out an OT security project, even just the tech before the operationalizing, can take a long time. Getting into every plant, getting it all connected in, racking and stacking gear, getting budget secured, training people. There's some customers that we've started with that want to move fast and they get a executive alignment and they sign an order in January, and by the end of the year, they're up and running with everything and operationalized, and that's awesome. We have some customers that started 5 years ago that started buying in small tranches that are still finding sites to then go deploy tech at, right? And so your journey can be as fast or as slow as you want, but OT security takes a lot longer to roll out than I think people realize, just given the nature of operations and our sites. And so it really has always been, even in the Dragoses of the world and similar vendors, of once I unlock this insight, now how do I operationalize that insight and then prepare you for the next one? So now going to your question, it goes back to the kind of the beginning of, well, now I'm getting a lot of insights and security alerts and firewall rules and configurations and all this other stuff. What do I do with all of this in terms of prioritization? And that's where I mentioned, I think, the sort of the next step really is helping people make smarter choices, which the Frenoses of the world. Well, I say Frenos of the world. I don't know anybody that does what you're doing, but Frenos and the category that you'll create, if it's a good enough category, you will have competitors. You always do. And I think that is that logical next step. But I'm starting to see, since you mentioned that people can ask us questions, we're starting to get flooded with it, which is good.
Yeah, we've got sounds like some drama in this electric utility here. We've got someone who said the IT director does not believe his team should have anything to do with OT or compliance.
Yeah.
The boss is the CEO, and they are not sure what IT versus OT role should be. How do we get them to understand IT, OT, and working together?
Yeah.
That
Oh
would
man.
motion.
You your journey is going to depend a whole lot on personalities. I mean, you'll get a CEO that had a background of a CFO and understands the financial impacts and they'll get OT, or you have a CEO that had a background of CFO and they don't understand their business and you won't get it. It really comes down to who understands their business. My like good examples out there, like Mark Gabriel's over at United Power, or Bill Furman over at AEP. Like you get, or Tom Fanning back when he's at Southern Company, you get somebody that understands their business, and you can use whatever term you want: OT, CPS, IIoT. It doesn't matter. If they understand their business, they go, that thing you're talking about is critical, and we are going to approach it with the uniqueness that is required and the investment required to manage risk of this organization. And so when you get executives that understand their business, these conversations are really easy. When you get executives that don't understand their business, you're going to get these fights. And so I'm not trying to put down the CEO that don't even know this electric utility, but if they don't understand the difference between IT and OT and what roles should be, it tells me they may not understand core parts of their business yet, because it's not about what's the title and what org chart. It matters about what outcome we're trying to get to against a problem that I understand. But here you got the IT director does not even believe. I love it when people use believe. Does not believe his team should have anything to do with OT or compliance. I would, if we had that IT director chatting in chat, they would probably say, I don't feel resourced for this. I imagine that's the big pushback. Though there are some IT folks that I've met, they're like, I don't believe in cyber threats to OT, and I'm like, that's okay. They believe in you. Like that's fine. But I would be willing to bet the issue here is a lack of executive alignment on what the problem is that we're solving, and an IT director that probably already feels massively under resourced. Usually people aren't just jerks. I've met them, there are some, but usually it's all a question of resource alignment to an outcome that we're trying to achieve on a combined problem. And then I think we missed one that was one above it too, on segmentation as well.
That's
I can go ahead and read that one if you want. Yeah, Rob, you mentioned segmentation is the foundational number one step for OT environments. However, it's been the biggest challenge for most customers, often requiring significant downtime. How do you envision them overcoming this? So I'm not saying it's the number one thing to do. I'm saying it's the number one thing that had historically been done. Before there was an OT security market, people still recognize the need to do some segmentation, firewalling, things like that. I would say that it is still a really important thing to do, though. I'm not putting it down. I wrote with Tim Conway of the SANS Institute, the SANS 5 critical controls. Those are what I view as like the 5 foundational things to do. Defensible architecture is number 2, which segmentation can go into depending on your requirements, but probably will. So it still is important. But either way, to your question of it's been the biggest challenge. Yeah, anytime you're making changes in operational environment, it's going to be a big challenge. And sometimes it's not even your company that's causing the issue, depending on the industry. Sometimes it might be the original equipment manufacturer, the OEM themselves. There's certain oil and gas environments, as an example, that if you want to do something in the distributed control system, DCS network, if Honeywell or Siemens or Yokogawa or whoever it is does not sign off on it, it's not happening. Or certain sites have to get involved with the OEM as well as like a union, as well as contractors and so forth, to go make a change at a substation could be $100,000. And so the cost of the tool or the cost of the people time is usually not the total cost that they're dealing with. And then there's potentially downtime or risk. And most operations folks have dealt with an IT person, whether it's in your company or externally, at one point in time messing up their environment. So there's usually this culture of if it's not broke, don't fix it. Please don't touch it. And there's way more cost here than you think in trying to get this done. So the way to overcome that is the alignment on what is the problem we're solving. Let's get around the table and understand what are the mechanisms we have to solve that. And if this is the answer to do it, then we've got to bite the bullet at some point. Now let's talk about staging, when it's going to take place, how to make sure that this is a long-term change, that we're not coming back in next year. There's some operations folks that are scared that once they say yes to some of the security efforts, that there'll be another one and another one and another one and another one. And it's like, let's not give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So starting with, here's the problem we're trying to solve, not just on security threats, but there's operational complexity coming in highly automated environments now that is causing resilience issues even before cyber threat discussions are emerging. And those operational resilience issues, there are some cybersecurity efforts that can help mitigate them or help provide root cause analysis and visibility into helping operations. And so show them the total value, but show them the whole picture of here is the program we want to do. Here's all the things that we are thinking about against the problem that we're solving. Or said in a very simple way, a lot of people want to jump to how. You should first start with why. Why are we doing this? Why is this change necessary? What outcome are we trying to achieve? Then let's talk about how and take your input on why that how may or may not work in your environment. So don't just fall in love with your answer or your technology. Start with the why and the what.
We'll do one last question from the audience, kind of going back to kind of the executives discussion here, Rob, around do you see a need for an OT CISO or a chief operations security officer role independent of the IT CISO?
Hmm.
Does see many orgs skew their OT orgs to IT ways of working. Yeah, I personally have seen this. I've seen kind of some OT security people with kind of IT product development titles, some interesting things happening from like a HR and role standpoint that I've seen across the industry. But and I've also seen things like a BISO, a business kind of CISO. Rob, I'm sure you've run into companies with BISOs as well. Yeah, what's your perspective on an OT CISO? Is that needed, or do you think kind of a CISO covering both sides makes more sense?
Yeah, it's really going to be size of organization and all that kind of stuff. I'm not a person that jumps to the how too much, the why and the what. I really want to focus there. Like, I don't want to try to dictate org charts to people. And to be honest, a lot of people love to throw out titles and they love to make org chart changes, thinking that that's going to change the outcomes. I do believe you have to have somebody that owns the answer. Like, you got to have accountability. But as long as you're assigning the accountability and it's clear and resourced, that the title isn't really the most important part of it. And so, could you have an OT CISO? Sure. Could you have a CISO do both? Sure. It's going to come down to what are they held accountable to and how are they resourced. My comment earlier is I'm seeing some frustrated executives and C-suite and board members that are going, I can't get my CISO to do anything on the operations side, even when we task them. I would rather take a hit. I would rather outsource my IT than outsource my OT because our OT is unique to us and the reason we're in business. I can find a bunch of providers that can go do IT security or IT operations. And I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying that's the mentality. And I'm not so sure I find a lot of flaws in the logic. I'd just rather we fix it in general instead of talking about outsourcing everything. So I would say as long as it's elevated and accountable, then it's okay. If you have to push for an OT CISO title, they're still just going to roll under a CISO at some point. The thing that I find more interesting in the question in terms of like independence, I generally think that your CISO can't report to your CIO. And so your CIO, Chief Information Officer, likely is more in charge of IT than on the operations side. You usually have like a COO or somebody else or VP of operations that's doing the OT side. So if that CISO fits underneath the CIO, a lot of their bias and flavoring is going to be to the requirements that their boss has, and whether it's uptime or whatever else, or innovation projects, or really just the IT side of the house. And so that anybody else just by nature is going to be a second class citizen. And if that's your operations side of the house, that's a bad idea in terms of where you find criticality in your company. So I would rather be an independent role, either reporting into a COO, CFO, general counsel, find some home for it. But I don't think as an org chart, CISO reporting into CIO works, even from an IT perspective, but it's very damning to the OT side of the house when that happens. Yeah, I've seen it work when you have a really good CIO and a really good CSO. I'm just saying from an org chart perspective, it's a recipe for disaster.
That makes sense. Well, appreciate you taking all these questions from the audience, Rob. Thanks everyone for joining our first Frenos webinar. Rob, thank you for being an advisor and
Yeah.
helping kind of bring a new product category to this space and helping people um, really identify the proactive things that folks can focus on in their OT security programs. So
Yeah, of course. And I think, kind of a quick closeout statement, because I think there's a lot of, customers and stuff that'll jump on this call and talk with y'all, but I want to try to take the venture capital and kind of investor side of it, and sort of speak to that audience for a second. And I think what you normally invest in is good teams and good markets, right? You don't know enough about the product or anything yet, and the product may change. I don't think yours will change that much. I think it'll actually expand, but I can definitely vouch for Brian and Harry and the folks over at Frenos in terms of being a good team, and being authentic. And I think in this community, you got to have authenticity. You can't have been working at IBM for 15 years and then jump over and pretend that you know everything about an oil facility. It's just it doesn't work. And so when you have somebody that had asset owner background, you had somebody that was working the mission, being involved in the space, whatever, come and say, hey, I've got enough expertise now to say, here's what I think can help. That's very authentic. And I definitely see that in the Frenos team. From a market perspective, yeah, the water's warm. Come on in, right? That the market's doing well in terms of operations perspective. What I've actually advised a number of the investors that you've put me on the phone with and have called me up anyways once they saw it, is I told them, look, from a market perspective, when you see the interest rates coming down, and we'll see kind of what happens. But this is a bit different from a market in the sense that there is a enormous amount of capital that's been raised by various firms, late stage and others, and it's just sitting on the sidelines and has not been deployed for a couple of years now, with sort of the interest rates spiking up. So I expect we're actually going to see a bit of a violent turn. And some of the people that I talk to, good firms like Guggenheim and others, are sharing the same view. Are not looking for valuations to ever come back like they were. These 50, 60, 70 X's were always stupid. But what I'm seeing is LPs talking about clawing back their money that they put into firms unless the firms deploy the capital. It's pretty normal. And there's a lot of capital to get deployed, and there's not a lot of authentic teams in good markets to invest in right now. And so I think Frenos is sitting on something pretty unique. And I would definitely tell the investors listening in that you probably ought to hurry up, because I don't think that Frenos is going to be on the market for very long in terms of shopping around for your fundraising needs. So good luck to you guys. And yeah, I think it's a good opportunity.
thanks, Rob, and we'll see you. Let's see, next week at Disc.
Yeah,
Yeah,
next
best
week
of
at this.
luck.
Yeah.
I always see you wearing some type of costume.
Yeah.
You
Well, it's fun, right? And so we have this year it's the Back to the Future theme. So I've got a pretty fly outfit. We'll see what it is.
Sweet, sweet. Well, I'll try to wear some Marty McSorley stuff and fit into the theme then.
Sounds great, man. All right. Thanks for having me. Take care, man.
See ya. Bye.